Welcome. I'm Kristen Perry. I'm a PhD student at the University of Toronto, and I'm also a CSPC volunteer. And it's my pleasure today to interview Dr. Shaarika Sarasija of the Humane World for Animals Canada. We're so happy to have the support of your company as well as your support as an active member of the CSPC community.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Really happy to be here.
Nice. So I'll get started with the first question. I know a lot of your research in your postdoctoral positions has focused on Alzheimer's disease. So how has your experience with this research led you to your role as the program director for research and regulatory science at the Humane World for Animals?
I'd say my journey was quite convoluted, definitely not a linear line at all. So I was doing a postdoc at the University of Ottawa. I was a CIHR postdoc. I was doing everything that you're supposed to do to be a successful postdoc. I was working with a mammalian model, a mouse model for Alzheimer's disease, because you need to have mammalian experience to secure grants a lot of the time to be, again, a successful scientist. However, I found the work to be very distressing to me. I've always been an animal lover. And for me to have to do behavioral tests on the mice and then sacrifice them, it was very difficult. It was taking an emotional toll on me. And I started looking at alternative careers where I could use my scientific background but not be at the bench doing the research. And that kind of led me to science policy and the Canadian Science Policy Centre. And I actually applied for the Youth Policy Award in 2021. Basically got the application, the proposal in at 11:50 p.m. or something like that on the night it was due, and the deadline was, and surprisingly enough, I won that year. So it was a very interesting entry into science policy. And after that, I got to, that year the conference was virtual, but afterwards I talked to Merida and I expressed my interest in working with this, in this area. He actually hired me as a part-time program manager for CSPC, so I did that while I was a postdoc. And almost 2 years later, I stumbled across a job listing for this position on LinkedIn. And I read the job description, and it felt like they were describing me. It felt like a tailor-made job for me. And I interviewed, got hired, and I must say I feel very happy to be where I am because I was feeling very disillusioned by the science I was doing a lot of the times, because it felt like we were doing the same thing and expecting a different result to come out of it. So for instance, animal models have been used in research for centuries now. And if you look at drug trials, 90% of drugs that work in animal models fail when you test them in humans in clinical trials. And this number goes up to 99% for Alzheimer's disease, but that's what you keep doing. So I had become jaded, and now I get to advocate for the use of alternatives, to fund the use of alternatives. And again, one of the simplest ways I explain the animal model conundrum is to say, you tested, say, chocolate on your dog. You wouldn't be eating it today because chocolate is lethal to dogs. However, dogs are frequently used as a non-rodent animal model when it comes to toxicity testing, even in drug trials. So it's one of those questions where now I get to advocate for a more humane world for animals. So that was my very convoluted journey.
That was really interesting. And that kind of leads into my second question of, I know last year you wrote an article for the Hill Times. It was talking about these new human-centric approaches as alternatives for animal testing called new approach methodologies.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about those new methods and how they work?
Sure. So new approach methodologies, new approach methods, non-animal methods, a lot of, ways to explain that acronym. They're essentially alternatives to animal models. And there are different ways of doing it. So you have a lot of predictive modeling, so in silico methods, you have in chemical methods, in vitro methods that you might be aware of, like cell culture, tissue culture, but more highly advanced things like organoids, organs on a chip. And the great thing about it is, like you said, they're human-centric. So they're based in human cell and human biology versus trying to replicate human biology in an animal. So the great thing about that is you can trust the data that comes out of it a bit more because you know it's relevant to the human physiology or human pathology. The thing is, I will be the first person to say we cannot stop all animal testing today and use, NAMs, as they're also called, instead, because we just don't have NAMs for every single purpose that we need them for, which is, there are certain ways in which we can use them, especially in toxicology and safety assessment of, chemicals, pesticides, things like that. There are certain endpoints that have NAMs and we can use them very effectively. But there are others, especially things like systemic toxicity stuff. So your reproductive toxicity, developmental toxicity, you do not have NAMs to replace. But that is where we need to focus our efforts and, invest.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, in your opinion, Canada could do to help support the development of these NAMs?
I would say, first of all, the Canadian government has been amazingly supportive of, cruelty-free science, human-centric science. So we were instrumental in securing the cosmetic testing ban in 2023. We also helped pass Bill S5, which was strengthening the Canadian Environment Protection Act, and it includes legislation now that allows for the use of NAMs instead of animals where scientifically justifiable. And the thing is, the regulatory framework in Canada is very much supportive of pushing against the use of animals and adopting more NAMs. However, the thing where we could do more is investment. So unlike the US, the EU, or UK, where tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested in NAMs, we do not have that. We do not have a NAM-specific funding stream. We do not have it as a priority initiative. There's never been anything like that. So I think the thing that the Canadian government can do to support this initiative is to fund. We need this money so that we can develop more effective, safer, faster, and eventually cheaper methods to do research and test the safety and efficacy of materials.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then just the last question. I was wondering what your opinion is on the CSPC and its position in the community as a connection hub, knowledge mobilizer, and talent incubator for science and the innovation policy landscape.
That is, I would say CSPC feels like home for me a lot of the time. So as I mentioned, CSPC was my foray into science policy in Canada. So for me, CSPC always has a very, it has a huge role in my development. And Mehrdad especially has been incredibly supportive. He was actually my reference for my job.
Really?
Yeah. So, I have, almost a 5-year history with CSPC now, and I appreciate everything they do. And coming to the Science Policy Conference, you meet so many people and you meet such interesting people from diverse backgrounds. And one thing I really value about CSPC is it gives voice to people who may not feel like they have a voice outside. So I love how much they highlight that. I love how much they respect the opinion of diverse voices, and how, everyone is welcome, and especially the fact that they foster youth, right? Like, everyone's not like an established policy leader. We have the Youth Policy Award, for instance, opened a lot of doors for me. And I think that is such a strong thing that CSPC gives back to the community. And yeah, as far as I'm concerned, CSPC is the most important, hub in Canada for science policy.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being part of the interview series and for giving us your insight on this.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.